Her voice cut through the hum of the quiet café like a blade, sharp and soft all at once. "Did you ever love me?" she asked, eyes glimmering with something unspoken, regret, longing, a trace of anger. He looked at her, and for a moment, the world shrank until it was just them. His fingers brushed hers on the table, almost accidentally, almost deliberately, and it sent a jolt neither of them could deny. Years of unspoken words hung between them, thick and heavy, yet somehow fragile, like crystal poised on the edge of a table. He swallowed, his chest tight, and whispered, "More than you ever loved anyone." The words barely left his lips before they seemed to echo, filling the space with their weight. There was a history written in the lines of their faces, the curve of her smile, the quiet tension in his shoulders. They had been apart, but the fire never truly died, it smoldered beneath casual touches, under stares that lingered a heartbeat too long. The café lights reflected off her hair, gold against shadows, and he could feel the pull again, the magnetic, forbidden, dangerous pull of what they had lost and perhaps could never fully reclaim. Every laugh they shared in passing, every accidental brush of skin, had been a spark, and tonight, the air was charged enough to ignite. They were standing on the precipice of something neither fully understood, something that could either burn them or heal them. She leaned slightly closer, her breath warm, her eyes searching for truth in his. He wanted to speak, to explain, but words failed him. All that remained was the tension that hummed between them, quiet, insistent, impossible to ignore. For a heartbeat, he saw everything they had been, everything they could never be, and it hurt and thrilled him at once. The moment stretched, fragile and infinite, as if the universe had paused just to watch them. And then she smiled, that small, knowing smile, and stepped back just enough to leave him wanting more. A secret lingered in the space between them, unclaimed yet undeniable. And as he watched her walk away, he realized the truth, nothing about this had ever been simple, and nothing about her had ever been forgettable. The air still shimmered with their tension, with a story that had only just begun. He didn't follow her immediately. Instead, he lingered at the doorway, eyes tracing the curve of her back as she disappeared into the soft glow of the streetlights. His chest ached with a familiar pull, a magnetic weight that had never left him, no matter how far they had drifted. She paused at the corner, as if feeling his gaze, and turned just slightly. Their eyes met across the small distance, and in that brief exchange, decades of memories collided with the raw present. The next night, they found themselves in the same quiet spot, almost by accident, almost on purpose. She stirred her coffee slowly, eyes not meeting his at first, but he could feel the tension vibrating between them. Every small gesture became a conversation, a brush of hands as she reached for her cup, the tilt of her head, the way she laughed softly at something he hadn't said. It was intimate, charged, electric. He wanted to reach out, to close the space between them, but something in him hesitated, fear, pride, a stubborn hope that some part of this tension could stay unbroken. She leaned slightly toward him, the faintest scent of her perfume drifting across the table. He noticed the small details, the curve of her smile, the way her fingers tapped lightly against her mug, the way her gaze darted to his, then away, as if testing the waters. He wanted to ask her 100 questions, to unravel the story written on her face, but his voice caught. Instead, he let the silence stretch, thick with everything they hadn't said. There was a rhythm to the night, a quiet dance of longing and restraint. Their conversation meandered through memories and laughter, and yet, behind every word, behind every glance, was an undercurrent of something more, something neither could name, yet both recognized instantly. His fingers twitched, wanting to brush against hers again, and for a heartbeat, it almost happened, a fleeting moment of possibility hanging in the air, broken only by the clink of a cup or the murmur of a passing customer. They both knew they were walking on a knife's edge, drawn to each other, yet restrained by unspoken fears and the weight of history. Every glance, every near touch, every silent laugh intensified the heat between them. And when the night ended, neither wanted to be the first to leave, to break the spell. The air remained heavy with potential, the story of them far from over, suspended in a space where desire and hesitation entwined. He hadn't meant to stay so long, but neither of them seemed willing to break the fragile gravity holding them together. The street outside was quiet, almost too quiet, giving their unspoken words room to fill the space between them. She laughed softly at something trivial, and he felt it tug at the edges of his chest, a reminder of everything he had lost and everything he still wanted. Her eyes flicked to his, searching, probing, as if she could see the walls he had built long ago and still clung to now. He noticed the subtle tension in her shoulders, the slight hesitation in the tilt of her head. Every motion, every glance, was a conversation they weren't ready to have, a dance of truth and restraint. He wanted to reach across the table, brush a strand of hair from her face, lean in closer, but the weight of their past held him back. He started, voice thick, then faltered. She didn't interrupt, didn't look away, she just waited, letting the moment hang, heavy and electric. He swallowed, wishing he could confess everything in a single breath, but fear, pride, and the memory of old heartbreak made him pause. She leaned slightly forward, and their fingers brushed, a fleeting contact that set his nerves on fire. She pulled back almost immediately, not because she wanted to, but because the pull between them was too strong to handle. They were trapped in a delicate tension, each gesture amplified by history, by longing, by the unspoken knowledge that giving in could change everything. Outside, a soft drizzle began, pattering against the café windows, mirroring the quiet storm between them. He wanted to tell her that he had never stopped thinking of her, that every laugh, every word, every stolen glance over the years had been for her. But instead, he let the silence linger, heavy and charged. She studied him, searching for cracks in the armor he'd built, and he found himself wondering if she was doing the same. They wanted each other too much, but the timing, the circumstances, the ghosts of the past, all of it whispered caution. Yet, in that charged pause, the air shimmered with promise and danger. They both knew that a single move could tip the balance, that one touch could unravel years of restraint. And so they sat, inches apart, hearts pounding, fingers almost touching again, suspended in the delicious torment of desire restrained. The café had emptied, leaving only the hum of the espresso machine and the soft patter of rain against the windows. They were closer now than they had been all evening, the space between them charged, almost unbearable. Every glance, every slight tilt of her head, seemed magnified, every inhale heavy with anticipation. His chest ached with the weight of unsaid words, and for a moment, he considered speaking, just letting the dam break. She reached for her cup, and their fingers brushed again, this time neither pulled away. The contact was fleeting, almost nothing, yet it rippled through him, a tremor that set his pulse racing. She looked up, eyes searching his face, and in that gaze, he saw the reflection of his own desire, restrained but undeniable. There was a quiet intensity in her expression, a fragile vulnerability he had longed to reach for, and he leaned slightly closer, drawn in by the gravity of the moment. "I've missed you," he whispered, the words soft but full of everything he had kept inside for years. The confession hung between them, heavy, intimate, impossible to ignore. Her breath caught, and for a heartbeat, the world outside ceased to exist. She didn't answer with words, she didn't need to. Her gaze, the slight parting of her lips, the slow exhale that brushed against him, spoke louder than anything she could have said. Time seemed to stretch, every second magnified by the closeness, the warmth, the unspoken acknowledgement of what had always simmered beneath the surface. He wanted to reach out, to close the final distance, yet some part of him hesitated, not from fear, but from the exquisite intensity of wanting so much that it could shatter him if released too soon. She mirrored him, poised on the edge of a decision, and the electricity between them hummed, almost visible in the charged air. Their foreheads brushed lightly as he leaned in, a whisper of contact that sent shivers down his spine. Eyes half closed, breaths mingling, neither moving further, yet the world seemed to collapse around them. Every unspoken confession, every withheld touch, every longing glance converged in that suspended moment. The heat was palpable, a storm contained in a single, fragile heartbeat, leaving them suspended on the precipice of something they both knew would change everything, if only they dared to cross it. The rain had intensified, drumming softly against the cafe windows, a gentle percussion that seemed to match the rhythm of their hearts. The night had thinned the world down to just them, the hum of the city fading into nothing. They remained inches apart, breaths mingling, the warmth of each other a quiet sanctuary in the cool, rain-scented air. Every small movement, a tilt of the head, a lingering gaze, the almost imperceptible leaning closer, carried the weight of years of longing. Her hand brushed against his as they reached for the same cup, and neither pulled away. The touch was light, electric, a spark that traveled through them, igniting every nerve. He watched the way her chest rose and fell with measured breaths, noticed the way the soft light caught the curve of her cheek. Their proximity made words unnecessary, their bodies spoke in silent, eloquent gestures, a language they had always known but had never dared fully use. "I can't stop thinking about you," he whispered, his lips barely moving, his voice blending with the rain. Her eyes glistened, reflecting the soft amber glow of the cafe lights, and she let herself smile, a slow, knowing smile that said everything he hadn't dared to ask. Her breath melted into his, and for a moment, the world ceased to exist. Every barrier they had built, every wall of pride or fear, seemed to dissolve, leaving only raw, unspoken emotion between them. They leaned closer, not in haste, but with deliberate care, savoring the tension, the electricity that charged the space around them. Their foreheads touched lightly, a featherweight connection that was heavier than anything they had felt before. The warmth of skin against skin, the subtle brush of fingers entwining, the soft exhale shared in the quiet, it was more intimate than words could capture. Every heartbeat, every tremor of anticipation, drew them deeper into a moment that was both explosive and serene, as if time itself had bent to their presence. And then the world outside became distant, the cafe, the rain, the night all melting away. There was no past, no future, only now, only the delicate weight of emotion pressed close, whispered, felt, and understood. Their bodies spoke the words they had held in their hearts for years. Every inhale, every sigh, every slight shift carried confessions they had never dared voice. In that suspended night, in the hush of rain and golden lamplight, they finally let go. Not with haste, not with noise, but with the soft, breathtaking surrender of two hearts that had finally found their way back to one another. The first light of morning filtered softly through the cafe windows, painting the room in pale gold. He sat alone at the table where they had lingered the night before, the faint scent of rain and her perfume still clinging to the air. His fingers traced the edge of the cup she had held, a small, almost sacred ritual, as if touching it might bring her closer. The room was quiet, yet it thrummed with the echo of everything that had happened, the whispers, the unspoken confessions, the weight of desire finally acknowledged. She arrived a few moments later, hesitating at the doorway, coat damp from the lingering drizzle outside. Her eyes met his, soft, uncertain, yet carrying the depth of the night's intimacy. No words came immediately, none were needed. The silence was thick, filled with unspoken questions. Was it love? Was it a fleeting escape from years of longing? The morning light illuminated the subtle traces of vulnerability on her face, the quiet smile that held both mischief and melancholy. They spoke slowly, carefully, letting their words navigate the fragile terrain of yesterday's confessions. Every glance, every brush of hands across the table, carried a history and a promise. They laughed quietly at small memories, whispered truths neither had dared before, and yet the room remained heavy with the residue of what had been, and what might be. The morning had not washed away the tension, it had transformed it, deeper, steadier, undeniable. Just as he began to think the moment would pass unbroken, the cafe door swung open. A familiar face appeared, a friend, a stranger, a truth-bearer, someone who would test the fragile bond they had reclaimed. Their presence was unexpected, a jolt of reality against the soft cocoon they had built overnight. Yet instead of fear, he felt a strange calm. She reached for his hand instinctively, and their fingers intertwined, reaffirming what had changed between them. The connection was no longer fragile, it was real, layered with desire, honesty, and the kind of intimacy that doesn't need words to be felt. As they left the cafe together, shoulders brushing, hearts heavy yet lighter than before, the morning air felt electric with possibility. The world had intruded, yet it hadn't destroyed them, it had merely reminded them that love, desire, and vulnerability could coexist, messy and beautiful, in the same breath. They walked on, side by side, suspended between what had been and what might come, the night behind them and the dawn before them, connected in ways that neither time nor circumstance could undo. The café was quiet now, the soft hum of morning fading into a gentle stillness. They sat side by side, shoulders brushing, a warm silence wrapping around them like a familiar blanket. The tension that had once crackled between them had softened into something steady, a quiet understanding that needed no words. His fingers found hers again, and this time they stayed, intertwined without hesitation, a silent promise that they had finally found their way back to each other. She rested her forehead against his, eyes closed, and let out a slow breath that carried all the relief, longing, and joy of a night lived fully. He mirrored her, feeling the rhythm of her heartbeat beneath his own, the steady warmth of her presence grounding him in a way that nothing else ever could. Words weren't necessary, the simple act of being close, of sharing the space without pretense or fear, said more than any confession ever could. Outside, the city moved on, cars, footsteps, the distant hum of life, but inside, the moment lingered, suspended in golden light and soft reflections on rain-streaked windows. They smiled quietly at one another, a small, intimate acknowledgement that the past, with all its complications, had led them here. The fire of desire had cooled into a lasting warmth, a deep bond that carried both memory and hope. And as they finally rose to leave, stepping out into the fresh morning air, they moved together with the grace of shared understanding. The world had intruded, yes, but it had only strengthened what they now carried, a quiet, sensual, and enduring connection. Even as they walked apart from the café, the air between them remained charged, a promise that the story didn't need dramatic gestures to be profound. Some love, they realized, didn't have to shout, it simply existed, elegant, human, and unforgettable.